come up with a plan, and I love the plan. We're going to have automatic soap dispensers, the kind that you don't touch. You just put your hand underneath there, and it dispenses soap. And we're going to have automatic towel dispensers. So, it's more sanitary, and it looks better. And Brother Fisher's also, we think, well, I know we're going to have those automatic soap dispensers in all the restrooms, even the ones upstairs, and the same with automatic towel dispensers. And I love those, especially during flu season or cold season. The less things you touch, it's just the better off you are. So, and then Brother Fisher's also working on. They have so many different types of trash cans, and I think he's got some picked out for our restrooms in there. I don't know if he's got the color picked out, but we're getting real close. The restroom's completely functional, but we're just adding some things, and it's looking good. I appreciate everybody's work and how hard they've been working and everything. So I just wanted to give you an update on that, which is why. Well, look who just came in. We're really thankful for everyone that's been working so hard. We do have another work day scheduled Saturday, and we're going to be doing things. We're going to start directing some of our effort, or at least a lot of it, into power washing the outside, in between the two buildings, and throwing away everything that doesn't belong in the gym. We have a big roll-off dumpster coming. We're going to be finishing up what little bit we need to do. Like, it's been a long time since I had a child. I have grandchildren, but when I worked on the design of the women's restroom, I was just assuming we would probably use baby changing tables. But it never entered my mind to use these fold-down, wall-mounted changing tables like you see everywhere. So we bought 2 of those really good ones. They'll actually hold 250 pounds. So that's overkill. So if you have a baby that weighs 250 pounds and you put it up there, it will hold the baby. Some of them are only designed to hold 50 pounds, and I thought, well, what if you put a baby up there and somebody leans on it? So I erred on the side. They're really nice looking, and so we're going to put those up. But in the women's restroom, I have to cut into the wall and put some wood backing in there so that it will be done right. But we're real close to being done with that. The apartment is completely done. Everything is just coming along good. So if you can be here Saturday, we appreciate it. I know it's getting closer and closer to youth meeting time, and I'm really getting excited about that. So I just wanted to give you a little update on that. And Brother and Sister Smith are on their way to the campground. And then I think Brother Talley and Sister Talley are going, aren't you? Oh, yeah. Is anyone else? I think that's about it, isn't it? Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Sister Grace and Sister Lila and Tanya. We would like to have gone, but we're still in the process of trying to finishing things up here. Also, I know, Brother Paul is not listening. I don't think he's listening to this, but he came out last Thursday during service and he fixed our air conditioner, and I really appreciate him doing that. I know he's not here, but let's give him a hand anyway. So, and I hope. My wife and I, we got a little bit behind on our Bible reading. We've just been so busy, like the rest of yous. And we have found it such a benefit to read the Bible through together. We've done it before, and we're doing it again. and we usually takes about a half hour to read the time that we've set aside, and then we'll talk about it. We'll ask each other questions, and it seems like every time I read it, the Bible as a whole, or even on a day-by-day basis, it seems like that there's a new thought or there's something new that comes to us. And the more you read it, the more you learn. You could read, my grandfather, he was really old when he passed away, but he had a Bible, and he read the Bible through every year, and I think I'm right, he had read it through 70 times, and that's a lot to read it through 70 times. And I know there's many here that read the Bible through on a yearly basis, or you can read it through on a 6-month basis. But the other day, we were reading in the book of 1 Kings, and I like to, my mind, maybe it's a little unusual, people may even think it's a little bit strange. I like some facts and figures that would bore other people to tears. But I came upon, when, in fact, let's just go to it real quick. I added this to my list of, let me find it here real quick. I should have prepared this better, but it won't take long. Hold a second here. It'll be in 1 Kings. Okay, 1 Kings 13. Let's go over to 1 Kings chapter 13. And I'll have to give you a little bit of this. To me, it was exciting to see that. Find my Bible program. 1 Kings chapter 13. What this is talking about, David, King David, he reigned for 40 years, and Solomon, his son, also reigned for 40 years. But toward the end of Solomon's lives, he did 3 things that God had commanded not to do. He multiplied gold, he multiplied wives, and he multiplied horses. And Solomon did all of those things. And to make that worse, Solomon, he had 700, was it 300 wives and 700 concubines? He had like 1,000 wives. And many of them were from foreign nations. And to consolidate Solomon's power, he would marry the daughter of these foreign kings, and that would consolidate his power. He married the daughter of Pharaoh, King Shishak, to consolidate the power. And some of the wives, they turned his heart away toward other gods. He built altars to Moloch and to Ashdod and to Baal and all these other gods, and he caused Israel to sin. Because of that, God told Solomon that he was going to take the kingdom from him, and he was going to give 10 tribes to someone else, but Benjamin and Judah would be left to his son. He said, God told him, because of my promise to your father David, that there would always be one of David's descendants on the throne. I won't utterly take all of Israel away from you, but I'll give you 2 tribes. So after Solomon's death, Rehoboam, which was Solomon's son, and Jeroboam, who later became the king of the 10 tribes that split, there was a big division, and God put it in the heart of Rehoboam's counselors, who were young men, to speak very hard and say very harsh words to all the people who assembled to anoint him as king in Solomon's place. And so 10 of the tribes, they left, and they made Jeroboam the king of what became Israel, or the northern kingdom, and the southern kingdom, or Judah, was ruled by Rehoboam. So Jeroboam God had told Jeroboam, and it would take too long to go through the scriptures. God told Jeroboam, if you do that which is right and have a perfect heart, like my servant David, then I will establish your throne, and God would bless him, just like I did David. Well, Jeroboam, he was a wicked man, and what he did, he built an altar. He made 2 golden calves, and he built altars. He did not want his people. If you remember your Bible history, the Ark of the Covenant, Solomon had just built that beautiful, wonderful temple with gold and silver, brass without weight. And Jeroboam, who was now the ruler of the northern kingdom, or Israel, he was afraid that because of Solomon's temple, which was in Jerusalem, which was part of Rehoboam's kingdom, the southern kingdom, or Judah, people would start to migrate to where the temple was, which made sense. But I have no doubt if Jeroboam would have done that which was right, God would have established, he told him, I will establish your kingdom. So to prevent the people from the northern kingdom to go to worship in the temple in the southern kingdom, he made false gods. He made two calves, molten calves. And to replace the priesthood that David had set up, it said Jeroboam made priests of the lowest sort of the people. They weren't even of the tribe of Levi. So there was a big division amongst that. And so we come to this place now where after a couple years, there was war between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, between Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And I was reading this, so this will give you a little bit of history of what's going on. It says, and behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel. And Jeroboam, which is Jeroboam, he's the king of the northern kingdom. And Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. And he cried against the altar in the word of the Lord and said, O altar, altar. Now this is the man of God. He's doing this in front of Jeroboam and all of his so-called priests. O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name, and upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. And I put the Bible down, and I thought, I've read that I don't know how many times, but I never caught that. Now there's 4 people I know that have the distinction of being named even before they were born by God. One of them, right here, this man of God came down and he cried against Jeroboam and the altar. And he said, there is going to be a child born of the house of David who is going to burn, destroy this altar and burn men's bones on there. Josiah wasn't even born yet. He wasn't born for over 200 years. I think that's amazing. My question has always been, how did God know Josiah? Did God send an angel because this happened almost 270 years after this prophecy went forth about the altar. Josiah did become king of the southern kingdom. He was of the lineage of David. He went, he found the scrolls of Moses and the writings of the law, and Josiah wanted to turn his people back to God again, which was, and again, there's 2 kingdoms, a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. Josiah was king of the southern kingdom, and when he found out all the sins that he and his people had been committed, he turned his heart wholly to the Lord, and he went and he destroyed that altar and he burned men's bones upon there, but that didn't happen for another 200 years. So my question, well, it was actually 3 other people that happened to. Over in Isaiah, Isaiah is prophesying about Jerusalem, God's people coming back out of captivity. from Babylon back into Jerusalem. If you remember, Israel was carried away after almost 220, 230 years of idolatry. Israel had many kings, but not one of them was a righteous man. And finally, God carried them away. And then about 100 years later, the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, because of their wickedness, carried the rest of the Jews into captivity into Babylon. But Isaiah prophesies about their time in Babylon and then coming back to rebuild Jerusalem and restore the kingdom. We won't go to it because it'll take too long, but he gives a prophecy. Well, let's go ahead and go to it. Because there's 4 people that I wanted to talk about real quick, and you can put that on your list of prophecies by a man of God who prophesied something that came to pass, a child's name and what they were going to do. Josiah is one of them. Then let's go to, let's see. I probably should have wrote this down. Okay, it's Isaiah chapter 44, verse 28. This is Isaiah, and this is part of the prophecy. Now, all of Judah has not been carried away into captivity. So when Isaiah is prophesying this, this is still almost 100 years in the future before Cyrus even does this. And it says, that saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd. And you might say, who is Cyrus? Cyrus is the king of the first king of the Mede and Persians. And he is the one who fought against Babylon and destroyed it. So Cyrus, he was a very important man, and he has the power of life and death in his hands, and he rules over a large empire. And it says, this prophesy, which came to pass about 100 years later, it said, that saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple, thy foundation shall be laid. I think that's simply amazing. And then also in Isaiah 45, verse 1 says, thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the 2 leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. These prophecies, and it calls him by name, Cyrus by name. He wasn't even born yet. And then we have another one, and that is Elizabeth, who was the mother of John the Baptist. And we won't go to it, but it's in the book of John. She was barren, didn't have a child, and an angel came on to her and told her that she was going to conceive and call his name John. And of course, he became John the Baptist. And then, of course, the fourth that we know. Can anybody guess who's the fourth person who was named by prophecy and by God before they were even conceived? Who? Yes, that's exactly right. Jesus. We all know about Jesus. And an angel came to her and said, you shall bring forth a child, and you shall call his name Jesus. So that's the 4 people that I know of in the Bible, in prophecies that happened before they were born. Some was just a few days, like Jesus and John the Baptist, but others may have taken 100 or 200 years. My question to you is, and nobody can really answer it, because I know God can put it in the heart. God, in the book of Revelations, God put it in the mind of the 10 kings to give their power to the beast for 1 hour. I got no doubt that God can set situations up, and he can put it in the minds and hearts of people to do his will. Someone said, you're either working for God or you're working with God. And so a lot of people are just simply working for God, and they don't even know it. It's just like the 10 kings. No matter how you look at the 10 kings, they do give their power to the beast for 1 hour, but it says God put it in their heart. I don't know how God does that. How does God do anything? These other prophecies, such as Josiah, they were through prophets. I don't know 200 years later if God sent an angel to the mother of Josiah and said, you're going to have a son, I want you to call him Josiah. I don't know if he did that or if he was able to look ahead. God can do that. He knows the beginning from the end. If he was able to look ahead and see this young man that had a heart that he could deal with, and he had Isaiah prophesy his name because he knew that this man was going to be formed. I don't know how God does that, but he's able to do that. It's amazing to me. The God that created all of this. Did you know before the invention of the telescope, which Galileo invented, in the 1400s, I think, is when the telescope was invented? A person with really good eyesight on a clear day or a clear night is able to distinguish approximately 6,000 individual stars. You look up and on a clear night, you just see all kinds of stars. And they've done that. About 6,000 stars can be identified. But now we have these telescopes, since the 1400s, we have these telescopes that not only can distinguish the stars in our galaxy, which we call the Milky Way, which they say has somewhere between 200 to 300 billion stars. That's a lot, but we only see 6,000 of them with our naked eye. Not only that, but there's galaxies beyond ours, and they all have the same amount of stars. My question is, why did God make those other ones? He's God. I don't know. I'd like to ask him one day. So anyway, that's just a little side bit. We weren't going to talk on that, and most people probably won't be interested in that, but you might want to mark it down in your book that there's 4 people. Maybe we'll find a 5th. I haven't found it so far, but little facts like that, they kind of interest me. Everybody's interested in something else different. Did you know, here's something that caught my attention years ago, and probably most people here don't know it, but it's always stuck with me. Paul, when he was on a ship and he was going to Rome, there was a storm that came up, and it caused the ship that he was in, it sank, and they named the storm. Does anybody know the name of the storm? It's Euroclydon. It's only mentioned one time in the Bible, but the thing is, when my wife and I were in the car together and we're going somewhere, I may have been to this place 100 times, maybe 1,000 times, and I'll ask my wife, I'll say, well, how do we get there? Where is it? I'm directionally challenged. But for some reason, my strange little mind remembers things like Euroclydon and some of these other things. And but I like reading the Bible. My wife and I, we read it through every year. One of the hardest books to get through is 1st and 2nd Chronicles. You have to make yourself. Sometimes you just want to skip ahead and say, well, yeah, they just keep doing the genealogies over and over and over and over and over again. But I found out, this was several years ago. Somebody was up talking, it was Easter time, and they were talking about the 2 men on the road to Jericho after Christ was crucified. These 2 men were walking on the road to Jericho, and Christ appeared to these 2 men, and he walked with them, and they didn't know it was him. And he asked them where they're going, and they finally, when they sat down to eat, they knew who he was, and he disappeared. And I thought, well, it gives their name, and so I started digging into it. And one of them, you have to trace it all the way back through the book of Chronicles, but he is related. He was actually I think it was either Mary's uncle or Mary's brother. I don't remember which. I'd have to look it up now. But you can only find that information in the book of Chronicles. And I found it interesting that Christ, the first people he appeared to after his resurrection, was family members. That would be a good message, you know. But everything in the Bible is important. So that's why I'm taking all this time to encourage you to read your Bible as a family. Get together with your wife, with your children. When my children were growing up, we had these Bible storybooks. I think there was a series of 20 of them. I don't remember now. But we would read 2 or 3 stories every night to them. And I don't know if they remember it or not. They probably do. But we've always put an emphasis on reading the Bible. Anyway, I thought Brother Painter did a really good job Thursday night talking about prayer that piqued my interest, and I'm trying to do what you say, Brother Painter, and I think God put that on your heart. You know, God dealt with me years ago on prayer, and I thought, why do we, if God knows the beginning from the end, and he knows the thoughts and intents of the hearts, and he knows what we need, why do we even need to ask him if he knows all that? And I was really asking God. I said, why? You know, I mean, if you already know what we need, why do we need to ask? Isn't that just a lot of wasted effort? And I started studying the scriptures, and there's a lot of scriptures on prayers. But it finally boils down to, I felt like God didn't speak to me audibly, you know, but through all this that I was looking at, I felt like God was telling me, I want you to pray because I want you to communicate with me. That's exactly it. Yeah, I know what you need. I know more than what you need, but I want you to talk to me. I want you to get to the place where you feel comfortable coming to me and talking to me and telling me your heart. And so I appreciate, Brother Painter, you doing that. I think that's Brother Clyde Patton. We may not even get to the Bible study that we had planned, and I'm just it may sound like I'm rambling, but I'm not. I'm trying to get to a place. Brother Clyde Patton, I always appreciated him, and I was there when someone asked him, this was years ago, what big thing did you do to become a successful preacher? You have a big church here, and you're a leading man in the body, and everybody respects you. What big thing did you do to get to this place? And I was there when he said, well, it wasn't any one big thing I did. He said it was all the small little things I did on a day-by-day basis. And I'll never forget him saying that. And I've always kept to the heart. And yeah, it's not, when you're serving God, it's not one big thing that you do that makes you a better Christian or does this or that, but it's all the good things that you do. And then he started telling about, I don't remember now because that's been almost 40 years ago, all the things he'd do. He said, whenever I go to a church, they always try to pay me money and say, that's fine, I'll accept your offering. He said, but I never left that church without depositing some money of my own in there just to show them that I really care about them. He said, that was a little thing. It may not be much, but it was a little thing. And he did it over days and years and months, the prayer, just all the small things he did. Not only is it all the small things that will make you a righteous person, successful in God, but it's all the bad little things, too, that you do on a day-by-day basis that could create enmity between you and maybe your brother, or even cause your relationship in God to grow cold. And there's a scripture. I also wanted to say, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was on a Thursday. I don't believe it was on a Sunday. Brother Fisher got up, and he talked about the earmarks of the body of Christ. It's been, 3 weeks ago? And there was a list. I have them here in this little book. And if you weren't here, then you need to talk to Brother Fisher, or we can give you some of the notes here. That was good. God's been using these two brethren here, along with Brother Smith, to help establish principles, big things and small things. Brother Smith has been working a lot in the area of prophecy and the restoration of the church. But we need those little small things, too, that we do on a day-by-day basis that's going to make it successful. It's the big things and the small things. So if you don't have those notes from, was that it on Thursday, do you remember? Okay. I think it was on a night when we didn't have as many people as we normally do, and it might be something you even want to get up and I remember him saying, that if anyone else had anything that they wanted to add to this list, and I've gone over it, and he did such a good job, I can't think of anything to add to it. It was so good. So I appreciate these men working and laboring in the kingdom of heaven. Now let's go over to it's in Galatians chapter 6. That's Paul's farewell address to the Galatians, and he hits on numerous things. We'll just read it here real quick, and then we'll get to the part that I wanted to talk on for just a minute before we close. Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Paul throws out a lot of principles in the 6th chapter of Galatians, he talks in the first 5 chapters, but then he comes back in the 6th chapter, and he reiterates some of these points again, and this is what he's doing, emphasizing what you need to work on. Bear you one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if a man think himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. For every man shall bear his own burden. Let him that is taught in the word communicate unto him that teacheth in all good things. Be not deceived. Paul's really, he says this, be not deceived, because he's trying to drive a point home. And I could just see Brother Clyde Patton. This is what Clyde Patton used to do about all the little things that made him successful in God. Paul's dealing with that here. He said, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be wearied in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. First time I heard this, I thought, wow. It was a message on reaping and sowing. And this man, he got up, and at first he started talking on the negative things about his life. This man is no longer in the body. He left a long time ago, but he was in Texas, and he was also in Springfield, Missouri with us, and we prayed for him, but things happened and he left. But he got up and he talked about the rule of sowing and reaping. He said, when I came into the body, I led a really rough life, and I've started seeing that you will reap what you sow. He said, I'm praying and asking God for a crop failure. He said, because I have sown so many wild oats, I'm just wanting to give me a complete crop failure. He says, but I know that those things will produce fruit. They're not good fruit, they're bad fruits. In the book of Galatians, it talks about the 7 fruits of the Spirit, but it also talks about the 17 works of the flesh. So that's what Paul is talking about here. He already just got done telling the 7 fruits of the Spirit and the 17 fruits of the flesh, the lasciviousness, lust, idolatry, lying, all these other things. And then Paul reiterates it here. He says, be not deceived, for what you sow, you shall also reap. And I remember when I heard that message, and then I heard Brother Clyde Patton talk about that and said, that's really right, because I've seen from my life before I came to Christ that there are things that were sold in my life, sometimes by me, sometimes other people have sold them in my life, that are bearing fruit. Now I have to go back and I pray God sometimes for a crop failure on those things. But I have to go back and I have to work on those things. But he said, don't be deceived, because you are, that's going to bear fruit. But what I like more than anything says, for he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. This is what I like. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. I like this. The natural law says, in my yard, I love grass. I take efforts on my yard. I'm not a good gardener, but I really try. And if I see a weed, I go over and I yank it out. I also have a company. They come and spray. But there's this one type of weed. It's called sagebrush or sage grass. It looks like Bermuda grass, but it grows a lot taller, and it spreads, and it's a weed. And you can't hardly get rid of it. The only way to do it, because you can spray killer on there, but it kills the weed, but it also kills the grass around it. So I have to go when the ground is a little bit moist, and I'll try and pull that thing up by the root. I know if I can pull it up by the root, that's going to quit growing there. But I found naturally it's so hard to get your grass to grow. But a weed, it doesn't need fertilizer. It doesn't need water. It doesn't need you to go out and talk to it it just grows, and if you let that go, it's going to take over the whole yard. But there is another principle that is involved with the things of God, and Paul talked about it right there, that be not weary of well-doing. I have found, even though there's things maybe we still deal with in our life from before we came to Christ, or it was inadvertently put in our life somehow. I know we're praying for a crop failure. That's not going to happen, but I'll tell you what will happen. It seems like the good seed that's sowed down in our life, it's the exact opposite of the natural. In the natural, weeds will overtake the grass. But in the spiritual, the more good seed, the more good principles, the more good things you have sowed down in your life, it's going to push out the weeds. And that will cause a crop failure. And to me, that was I loved it. So I appreciate what Paul has had to say. And that's why I love listening to Brother Painter and Brother Fisher. They talk about the small things that I could do, prayer, those earmarks of the body of Christ. And as I try to implement them in my life, and as God helps me and I yield over to that, I see some of those things that I'd sowed maybe starting to shrivel up. They don't have as much, maybe they don't have as much. I might even get to the place where they don't even producing fruit anymore if I could just get them to a stalk and then the stalk disappear. But God can do that. So I appreciate God so much, and we only have a few minutes left before we go to band practice. Did anybody have a question on anything I said? I know I kind of rambled, but I was trying to get a little point across. All right. If that's it, then we'll see y'all upstairs. God bless y'all.